Lopes fans, welcome in. My name is Brennan Williams, and this is Go Lopes Radio. It is the holiday season, and so we had to bring in a very special guest, the voice of the Lopes, Micheal Potter. Potter, how are you doing today? How the holidays treat you? You feel refreshed and ready for a big stretch run here?
Yeah, doing great, man. Thanks for having me on. The holidays are always better when you have a little three-game win streak going on
Yeah.
into the holidays and, playing well, at least in the first halves of the last two games, makes you feel a little bit better about the holidays, but it's been really nice.
Yeah, that IU Indy game, interesting one. I actually didn't do a recap. One of those, Truly always says, you kind of the famous college basketball guy always says those are the hardest games to play. IU Indy obviously not very good. They play a unique pace. I hate to say it's one of those ones like win and move on and go get a great meal and get some time with family and come back. But I guess we can kind of start there really quick. I mean, just IU Indy, do you feel kind of the same way? Like, hey, let's get this thing to conference play, keep everyone healthy, and get the win. Not worried about trying to impress any of the data boys.
Yeah, I think that's probably accurate. I mean, I think they would have liked to play better in the second half, so it's two games in a row where we had amazing first halves. I mean,
Yep.
probably the best first halves, best games we played, and then lost the second half of the game. Now, to keep it going against Wyoming on their home court, that's one thing. So it would have been nice to pull away, kind of like Utah State did at home against Colorado
Yep.
State. Win both halves by 20. But I do get it. That is a weird team to play. I mean, they play such a hectic, chaotic brand of basketball that to hang on, get the win, and win kind of going away a little bit after it getting to 3 points. That's a good win all in. And yeah, you just kind of go home, enjoy Christmas, enjoy New Year's, and get back ready for Mountain West play.
Yeah, so we're gonna do a little bit of an optimistic show. I thought this would be fun. I did something similar last year. Some guys who had improved, and I thought, let's just do this all optimistic sort of show. Things that we've seen that we really like that either are happening right now, things we could think could happen, guys who could develop, things we are liking what we're seeing. But before we get there, let's talk a little bit more. Just talk some IU Indy. I'm going to paint the picture for our non-con. Obviously, the Wyoming game is going to be a little bit of the, the dessert, I guess, if you will, on the non-con. That's going to be a great taste in everybody's mouth there. But a quick breakdown of what we saw in non-con. We can talk about it a little bit. 97 in net, 93 in Ken Palm. And you look at all the games that they were projected to lose, and they didn't get any wins there. So, some of those bigger teams, Oklahoma State, St. Louis on the road would have been fantastic. They don't get any of those, and they win everything except for the Youngstown State game early in the season. That one obviously really tough. The St. Louis game was, I was there in person. It was a tough one. But you do kind of end it with the Wyoming, the one conference game. So I'm curious, just kind of before we get into that kind of that positive, optimistic sort of vibe, how do you kind of grade out or talk about this start to the season? Especially all things considered, right? A totally new group almost.
Yeah, I love it. Loving new players. I mean, the only guys back, of course, Mackay and Caleb that played significant minutes. I would grade it out as, if you had to give a letter grade, probably a B, maybe even a B minus, right? Because of the Youngstown State game. I mean, that's a game you needed to win at home.
Yep.
Everybody knows that, right? And then kind of the shellacking, I guess, for lack of a better word, up at St. Louis. I mean, they really took it to us, But I almost kind of look at this as not, non-conference and conference, but almost 3 seasons. I think that St. Louis game was kind of a watershed moment for Coach Drew, where he kind of realized, hey, look, I've got all new guys. I'm trying to get them to play exactly the type of offense and defense I want. Okay, they have to play the defense, but can I draw up some plays to make them more successful with their skill sets on offense sooner? I don't have them for 2 years to learn this system. Brian Moore Jr. played a totally different system last year. Jaden Henley, totally different system. We're asking these guys to do a lot more different things. So I really almost feel like, man, they learned a lot in that game. And since then, they've been playing much better since that St. Louis. So I almost kind of look at it as two halves of that conference. So that's the optimism. They're figuring out how to play together, and Coach Drew is figuring out how to coach them as they enter conference play.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. And also we have to mention the staff as well, right? A lot of turnover on the staff. So the players are feeling out the new staff, the staff's feeling out the players. Yeah, you get your summer, but it really is kind of this new era. I in my mailbag I just did I talked about how important bringing guys back is and how unprecedented, you know, real high level success would be with this group. And I think we're seeing that process kind of playing out. I think it is tough to say to fans like, "Hey guys, this is going to take time." It is the reality. You can't fight that. It is real, but it is kind of tough to say, "Hey, we weren't ready for that St. Louis game necessarily." As a group, they just maybe weren't ready to win that game. So it's kind of tough to take those lumps as they happen, but I think that Wyoming game, you were there. I think we can maybe use that as our catapult into some of our more optimistic. But obviously, that was the game. That was kind of the signature win. Wyoming, they had overachieved. I thought a lot of room for them to kind of regress. That Wyoming team, they play a unique style. But listen, at the end of the day, you go into someone's house, you win a Mountain West Conference road game, their first Mountain West game, and that was really impressive. You were on site as well there. So is there anything kind of being there in person that you saw that, you can add into that to say, just how great of a win that was?
Yeah, I think it was really a good showing in the sense of, like I said, they're playing a different style. Coach Drew is coaching differently, and he set them up for success. I thought Caleb Shaw, the addition of him into the starting lineup, has been
Yeah.
fantastic. And, he's really looking to get F.A. Demeril more involved, and I think that's trickling down to the other guys as well. I thought what was so good about Wyoming, there were a lot of reasons to go, oh, this is going to be a tough one for us. The elevation, they're playing great, they're feeling great, the flight in. They got diverted to Fort Collins, had to bus in. Things aren't going as planned necessarily, but they came out and I thought that was the best first half they played all year. I mean, they just
Yep.
jumped on them early, and it was almost as if in that first half, Wyoming was kind of like, "Dude, get us out of here." Now, credit Wyoming, they got a talking to at halftime, and they came out and
Yeah.
outplayed us in
Yep.
the second half, right?
Yep.
But it is hard to keep that going for 40 minutes. And I thought the guys, they played through a lot of the tiredness of being at higher levels, but that was the best first half. I do think that first half really served notice to the Mountain West. Like, hey, doesn't matter what we did in non-conference. This is the team that we can be.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, every reason to, maybe let them linger, get back in, and at each maybe media timeout. It's right. Can you sustain that? We know how hard that is, especially conference basketball. I've tried to talk, how much different of a beast this is going to be in the Mountain West versus, maybe what Lopes fans are accustomed to in the WAC. I mean, literally each, 4-minute media timeout, things can totally switch. There's so much talent on the floor at all times. Really good coaches too that know how to move pieces and do things at different times. That's going to be, a massive, massive challenge. So yeah, Lopes get the big win. Wyoming obviously handle business. IU Indy. So we find ourselves here post Christmas, a little bit of a break. We know a lot of the guys got to go home, I believe, if they wanted to. They come back and we have the rest versus rust conversation, but they play another game this Saturday, Colorado State. And we're going to talk about, we each have three things that we're really excited about, optimistic about as we, kind of look at things moving forward, things that we've seen, or, like I said, we're just really excited about moving forward. You were the guest on the podcast, so you get to go first. Let's hear what you have, maybe the thing you are most excited about or optimistic, positive about with this group.
Okay, no, that's great. The thing I'm most optimistic about is it dovetails right on what we're talking about is I think they're starting to come together as a team. They've liked each other and been together as friends, and there's no animosity on this team. There's
Mm-hmm.
never been any, where's mine? I want mine. Why does he get it? Why not me? Makai Williams has been bench, starter, bench, could
Yep.
care less. I mean, that's legit. He could care less. Brian Moore didn't start it, didn't care.
Had an
Doesn't care
injury.
that,
Had an
yeah,
injury as well, right? Yeah.
doesn't care that he's not getting the ball like he did at Norfolk State in his hand all the time. Jaden, they really don't care. They just want to play together and win. But we're starting to see that on the court now. If you go back to kind of what I said before, if you take the first games before St. Louis and then after St. Louis on, we're 6-2 after St. Louis, right? And on that flight home, Bryce Drew, he sat next to Paul Coro. I was in the aisle over. He normally tries to do something to take his mind off flying because he's not a big fan of flying, right?
Yeah.
So he had a piece of paper and he was just drawing out plays, drawing the half court part, trying to figure out ways to put these guys into successful situations. And told me later, he said, I can't coach them the same way I coached Ray and
Yep.
Tyon, and they're
It's different.
different dudes. They're totally different. The way they think, the way they play, the way they're inspired. So I give Coach Drew a lot of credit. A lot of coaches are like, hey, this is how I play. If you can't do it, hit the road. But he realized on that St. Louis game. So I think we're starting to see it. Now, we haven't seen it for 40 minutes, but man, the last two 20-minute halves, that's some of the best basketball we've seen in a long time. And Jaden Henley continues to figure out, when do I need to take over? Because
Yep.
to compare, he's the Tyon this year, right? I mean,
Yep.
he's the guy that can take over and win a game for you. And he's like, when do I need to assert myself? Nana is figuring out, when do I need to assert myself? And when do I just need to get a bunch of rebounds? So they're all starting to figure out where their places are. So I think that progression will continue. As you mentioned, in the Mountain West Conference, there's no breaks. Let's be honest, there were breaks in the WAC.
Yep.
We didn't win them
Absolutely.
all the time, but there were
Yep.
breaks. There's no breaks in this one. Doesn't matter who you're playing, it's going to be tough. So I'm really encouraged by how quickly, since he decided to say we're playing a different offense that suits you guys better than maybe me, how quickly they're figuring that out. Like I said, 6-2 since St. Louis.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very similar to one of my points. And my one kind of my big point was this team slowly turning into, there's parts of it that where it's slowly turning into a Bryce team or things that he wants to do. I think the first thing is the defense. So we're starting to see it slowly trending. Obviously the Youngstown State game, that was really bad. Not good. The St. Louis game, we were both there in person. Yes, GCU closed with an 11 or 12-0 run. That was as bad of a beatdown as you get college basketball wise when you're on the road on an island, literally, essentially on an island there, the whole crowd going crazy. The students were right there. And now we're seeing things kind of start to kind of get in motion defensively. They got up to, before IU Indy, Ken Palm had them 39th in the country defensively, which, I don't know if we would have believed that after Youngstown and St. Louis, right?
Right.
And so you're seeing this group start to come together on the defensive end. And I think you're right. And you said something like this earlier, right? We're going to start with the defense. And listen, if we're going to figure out this offense and, maybe we're going to have to, I wrote my mailbag as well, just trying to get guys to pop, can we get a Jaden Henley tonight? He goes 1 for 11 against Coastal Carolina. Can somebody else step up? And defensively, I think that plays in the Mountain West. We know that does, if you can guard really, really tough. And so they find themselves 45th right now in the country defensively. I don't want to say it feels like a miracle after those two early season games, but it feels like a real statement. Since that, I agree, kind of that Utah game felt like a big one. Utah maybe not very good in the Big 12, but they did such a good job defensively. If you remember the guard, Terrence Brown, who's so good. Yep. I think he was leading the country in scoring or top 3 at that point. They held him to 9 points. And he, by the way, has been still going nuts since that game. So a really incredible effort. So you look at that. And the two other things I pointed out, I kind of just spent a quick second going through past Bryce teams here at GCU. They've always been pretty good offensive rebounders, around top 75, and then top 75 at getting to the free throw line. We know Tyon was so great at it. Ray was so good at getting to the free throw line. You're talking about how to figure out this offense, and it's a work in progress, right? It has been hit and miss. The shooting, it's been spotty, but you can get a few extra possessions a game on the offensive rebounds. And then, you can make some free throws. That's a great way to say, hey, we're going to be a top 40 defense. We're going to be able to score at the free throw line. We're going to get a few extra possessions on the offensive rebounds. And then that other gray area on offense. Can we just patch something together? It doesn't maybe even have to be 40 minutes of greatness on the offensive end, but you start with all those things. And those are kind of the Bryce, I don't want to say non-negotiables, but those are kind of the 3 things you see with him when you look at kind of his team's profile. So I agree with you in that we're seeing this thing kind of slowly kind of maybe move towards how Bryce wants to do it. And then he has that flexibility in those other areas, like you said, to try to figure stuff out. And he's got a whole, at the end of the day, he's still got quite a few games to piece stuff together. So excited to see that. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on just kind of like what you said, right? This team kind of I feel like they're finding a little bit of an identity, and Bryce is maybe knowing the little levers to pull with this specific group.
Yeah, it's interesting. Bryce Drew likes defense and he likes physical defense, right? We've always been, I think we've been the bigger team in every game, if not, 90% of them. But we haven't been the most physical team. I mean, we gave up
Yep.
like, I don't know, 152 rebounds to the kid who's 6'5" up at St. Louis, right? Like,
Yep.
because he was just more physical than anybody on the floor, regardless of size. And I think these guys are starting to realize just because I'm bigger than everybody doesn't mean I'm the most physical. And I think they've been I think Wyoming was very surprised with the defensive physicality from our guards all the way to our bigs. I thought Caleb Shaw, and then they switched guys out.
Yeah.
But, Wyoming had a great freshman, Naz Meyer, and he got 12, but he didn't do anything in the first half. They made it hard on that.
He was
and I don't
45+% from three, I think, coming into the game. And
yeah, he didn't hit a three in that game. And they made it hard on him because of the physicality of that. And earlier in the year, before the St. Louis game, I think that caught their attention because there were games where they just kind of shrunk a little bit. They were out physical by Youngstown State. That shouldn't happen, right?
Yep.
And I think that St. Louis, because that was a beatdown, and I think they were embarrassed by it. Coach Drew was, and he was like, guys, never again. And so he started doing two-a-days. He started saying, we're going to be physical or else you're not seeing the floor. And it really resonated with the guys, I think.
Yeah. And, we could bring up the Oklahoma State game. Obviously, Parsifal, I think that's a one-off. I said he's the Steven Adams of college basketball. It's like you're not going to move him. You're going to run into two of those guys a season, maybe, so we're not going to worry about trying to be tough around a guy like him. But, I think it was kind of all things considered. It's been good over the last few games. Okay, you've shared one, I've shared one. So we are back to you. Let's hear another thing that you're really excited about.
So I'm super bullish on Caleb Shaw.
Okay.
I feel like I almost have to say this every time, and I say it on the air because I've been tough on him on broadcast the first 2 years of his career because he just plays out of control, and he was making silly mistakes in costly situations many times. It wasn't because he doesn't know the game or wasn't trying hard. It was almost because he was trying too hard to do something special, right? That's kind of his game, just so aggressive, and I give him a ton of credit. He worked on his shot for the last 2 years with all the assistant coaches. He gave Peyton Prudhomme, who was with us the last couple of years, a lot of credit in that. Mark Rogers kind of made fun of his shot, a lot because it was very flat. He worked on that shot. And then he talked to Jordan McCabe, and he told him, he said, listen, you don't have to go 100% on offense all the time. You have to go 100% on defense all the time. But on offense, you got to pick your spots, and you got to calm down.
It's really well
bit.
worded.
And we've seen Caleb do that really since the St. Louis game, and it's got him into the starting lineup. And when you have a guy with that size, with that explosiveness, and that athletic ability that can shoot nearly 60% from the floor and about 50% from the three-point line, it just opens things up for everybody. I just have to give him a ton of credit. I think his leadership has been unbelievable as one of the guys who knows his uncle's system, right, and has played in it. And I think his effort has been fantastic on defense and has been very controlled and pointed, I guess you'd say, on offense. So I'm very bullish to see him grow the rest of this year and ideally next year as well. Because I think he can be something. I mean, that size, that athleticism. And I've always said this. I said this 2 years ago. He reminds me kind of Dan Marley when Dan Marley joined the Suns.
That's right? Interesting. Yeah, literally.
He wanted to attack everything. And then the Suns traded Jeff Hornacek and said, hey, we need you to be a three-point shooter. And Dan went to the gym. He shot 1,000 shots a day with his best friend, and he became a great three-point shooter. And that's kind of what Caleb is starting to do. And so this is not to put pressure on him to become Dan Marley because Dan was unbelievable. but that's the one thing I see in him that I give him a ton of credit for that. And I think that's going to be huge moving forward because he's a problem to guard for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think the other big part of that too is it is kind of a tough pill to swallow, right? You're a college Division I athlete. To be there's like a self-awareness and he had some really bad passes over the last few years, without a doubt, and timely turnovers, uncharacteristic stuff. And there wasn't a ton of fixing it, I feel like, early on, and I know you said you were hard on him. There's a self-awareness that comes with that. That's kind of hard. And especially in today's college basketball, we know the realities, right, of the environment. There's money, there, there's all sort, you're on TV. I mean, this is great, right? But to have the self-awareness to say like, dang, I gotta pull back a little bit I feel like it is hard. And I feel like he's made, tangible changes, maybe a few bad turnovers to start the season, at different times, but his skill set, I'm not sure there's a guy whose skill set is more needed. I'm not sure if he's the best player or whatever on his team. I don't think there's a skill set that's more needed than Caleb Shaw is for this team. The way they've shot the ball, every time he makes a three, I've said this honestly about this team. Every time anybody, but I feel like especially Caleb, it's just such a depressurizer. It feels like everyone is able to just take a deep breath. Like, okay, made a three. That's great. Everything can spread out a little bit. I've been really impressed by him. We've praised him as well over here. And I mean, that Oklahoma State game that's Power 5 competition. And it wasn't just a 3-point shooting. He's getting to the rim. And yeah, I think the last thing that I really love that you said about him is kind of picking his spots and to use his athleticism in other little areas is really awesome. I feel like it's, obviously we love the Caleb Shaw posters that he's had, the 4 or 5.
Right.
They've been fantastic. Even the rebounding, I think that's probably fun as a player. You could just go up there and grab a ball and just pound it when you grab it. He's doing so many little things, I feel like, in using his athleticism in other ways. And that's when he's really bought in. And I remember he said after the Oklahoma State game, someone asked him a question in the presser, and he kind of just didn't have an answer. He says, I don't know, man, we want to win so bad. And he didn't have any other thing to say. He just said, like, we want to win so bad. And I remember that. I thought that's interesting with how much he's putting in the time on the little stuff, the self-awareness. When he said kind of, we want to win so bad, I thought that was really telling. And I think, man, I think I'm excited too. Like I said, man, at this point, I'm like, I would maybe look at getting 5, 6, 7 threes up a game if he's going to be shooting this well. I mean, and how important and vital that's going to be for this group. So I'm curious to see how many he starts kind of throwing up there because he's been successful. I don't know. I mean, this is a big sample size, right? This isn't, last year he was 42%. I don't know. He's been really impressive this year. So I agree. A massive shout out to Caleb Shaw, 45% from 3 as we sit here right now. So that's a big sample size over 12 games. So
yeah, his I forget the exact stat. Josh Hauser puts him out, and he was top 10 or 11, I think, in the country. 2-year plus 3-point shooting percentage. Yeah. And so I think you brought up a great point. Sometimes guys are uncoachable, right? Because I mean, look, these guys have been the best everywhere they've been. I mean, what they're currently doing has gotten them to where they are.
Yep.
Sounds stupid, but they've gotten here. Why do I need to listen to you, And sometimes it takes a St. Louis to go, oh, maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was because a dude 6'4" just got 15 boards on me. So maybe I do need to listen to the coach. And so I give them credit for having that humility. So many players, they get to a level, and if they don't have the humility to say, I can still learn from people, they just cap at that level. Yeah. And the great ones, they have humility. That's why Kobe would call guys and go, hey, show me that move. Teach me that move. He's freaking Kobe Bryant. And he's asking a rookie to teach him a move after a game. He's like, I couldn't stop that. Show me that move. That's why they were great. And so I give Caleb a lot of credit. I give Brian Moore Jr. He said after the game, I just want to win. He goes, I'm not going to score 28 points a game like I did at Norfolk State and have the ball in my hand 40% of the time, but I don't care. He goes, I want to win in my last season in college basketball.
Yeah. Yeah, really. Gosh. Yeah. We've loved the Caleb Shaw, performances we've had this season and looking forward to many more. Like I said, what he brings to the table is so important. I think that kind of takes me into my second point, which is the shooting. And listen, hasn't been great. The eye test hasn't been good. The stats back it up. They shot really well at Wyoming, but they're still 290th in the country in 3-point percentage. One point, I think they were 320th before Wyoming. And yeah, it hasn't been good. There's been a few games that have been especially bad. I think there's been some ill-advised ones, some early shot clock, maybe from some guys that probably shouldn't be taking them, some guys that are settling, not easy ones in transition. And so my thing is, I've talked about, can they manage the 3-point variance? We saw it first in that Baylor game. I think they were minus, was it 24 or 27 on the threes, and they lost by 8.
Yeah.
So if they can just manage the 3-point variance, they can get a little bit better. They can get up to 200th in the country. They can make two more threes a game. Maybe they don't allow other teams to score as many threes. I just think they can win the games in other areas. I think they're so good and talented in other areas. They've been a pretty good rebounding team. Obviously, I think at one point they were a top 8 or something defensive rebounding team. They're getting tougher, as you talked about. They're learning how to figure each other out. And if they can just make a few threes, deep pressurize when they have the ball in their hands, I think it clears up a lot. And at the end of the day, my point here, my optimistic point is, can some guys regress to the mean? Because I did a chart that talked about everybody who last year or their previous stops shooting the three to Kier, and it's bad. Everybody dropped pretty much. I mean, Caleb Shaw obviously, took quite a bit of step up, but we have guys that dropped 10% on threes, just coming here. Can some guys regress to a quarter of the mean? Maybe they don't have to meet in the middle, but maybe they can just improve a little bit. And if they do, I think this team is good enough in the other areas. They do plenty of other good things. They have a bunch of different options. And, if they're going to be a little bit tougher in general, just managing that 3-point variance, I think, makes you a little bit optimistic. Now we're going to get the ultimate test, Colorado State, on Saturday. The best 3-point shooting team in the country. They're banged up without a doubt. Utah State, a good 3-point shooting team. So we are going to see this play out. We don't get a lot of time to test this theory out, but I think the idea would be, hey, can some of these guys regress to the mean, which means just shooting it just a little bit better, win the games in the other areas. I'm curious your thoughts on the shooting.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, when I look at it, the last, I was just pulling it up here, the last couple of games, 17 threes, 18 threes. They had 30 against Coastal Carolina. That's way too many.
Yeah.
But if they can shoot between 17 and 22 threes a game, something like that, I would love to have Caleb Shaw take 7 of them, right?
Yeah.
I would love to have Dusty Tromer take 5 of them.
Yeah.
I would love to have Nana take 3. The last 2 games, Nana's been 2 of 3 from 3. He's starting to shoot it better. And he's another guy. He went to the coach, and the coach helped him work on his shot. And, Bryce didn't tell me this, but my thought is, I wonder if maybe they were telling these guys, hey, you need to work on these things. And it just wasn't resonating until the St. Louis game. And then all the guys went, shoot, we probably should think about this. Nana shot the ball much better the last 2. So they shot, 41% against IU Indy. They shot 40% against Wyoming. So I think you're right. I think it's ticking up the other way. And the trick is having the right guys do it. That's the other thing about Caleb Shaw's emergence. It allows Dusty Stromer to go to the bench and come off of the bench.
Yep.
I think Dusty's defense has been really good because he's a problem at that size and that length for guards his size. And I think he's getting more comfortable with his shot, letting the defense lead to the offense. I feel like, I haven't talked to him about it. I feel like maybe it felt like to me, and I'll get your thought, like he came in going, oh, I'm supposed to be the guy that just lights up the 3, so I better start jacking him up. Yep. And it's like, no, you don't have to. If you take 4 or 5 a game and make 2 or 3, dude, we're good. We're winning. We're fine. Caleb will take six of them, and he'll make 3. That's 5, 6 made threes between you two guys. So I think you're exactly right. I think that's part of them kind of figuring out where they fit in, and I don't have to jack up those threes. And as far as where the other points come from, I mean, gosh, 4 of the last 5 games, they've had over 20 free throws. I mean, over 30 the last 2 games.
Yeah.
This is a team like past Bryce Drew teams with Tyon and Ray and Simo, and they can get to the line and they shoot it pretty well. And then F.A. Demerol is a big guy. He's a problem inside for nearly everybody, and he's a really good free throw shooter too. I'd love to see F.A. get the ball more inside and get to the line, 7, 8, 9 times a game, because he's going to make 60, 70% of those.
Yeah, and that sets up, right, that's so key, the free throws are, because what does Bryce Drew teams do the best? Defense. And when they have to bring the ball out of the hoop and you get to get back and get set, now we're talking a lot different than if you remember having to play St. Louis in transition, Youngstown in transition, obviously a different team since then. But when you can make some free throws, everyone gets a little bit of a break. The defense gets set. Oh, it's a lot different ball game than when you're kind of playing on your heels, trying to read and react in real time against really good players. So, and that's going to be tested moving forward. So hopefully, yeah, like you said, some of that shooting gets figured out a little bit. And yeah, hopefully just a little bit regressing to the mean, the right guys taking those shots, and guys kind of still feeling things out. I think all those things can come together. We could see a little bit better shooting there, but let's hear your final point.
Yeah, I'll go with the bench. I think with bringing Caleb Shaw in and having FA back in it, it gives us a really deep bench, and more importantly, it gives us a bench that Coach Drew's not afraid to go to. I think many coaches when they get here, they don't play guys because they don't trust them. It has nothing to do with their ability, nothing to do with anything other than I just don't know if I can trust you to play
Yep.
meaningful second half minutes. By now turning and looking at the bench and having Makai Williams and Dusty Stromer and Wilhelm Breidenbach on that bench, there's three guys that he's totally comfortable with. I think if Caleb Smith could start putting some better games together as far as marking and points, marking and rebounds, I think
Yep.
he's doing good things on the floor. It's just not translating to stats right now. That would give you four deep, which is about the most Coach Drew wants to play. But he would be comfortable putting any of those, for sure, three in any situation in the second half. So I think the bench could be huge because, like I said, I think Dusty is much more comfortable for whatever reason coming off and playing off the bench, and I mean, he'd be starting almost anywhere else. And Makai Williams, that speed and
Yep.
athleticism he has
And
when it
the
comes
added
in.
size this
I mean,
offseason.
Brian Moore's fast, but man, when
Yeah.
Makai gets in there, we just ratchet things up. So I'm excited about the fact that there's a bench that has three really good players. And I think Caleb Smith is a good player too. I think it's just maybe taking him a little more time to figure out exactly where he fits in and translate that into points. Every time he comes in, he plays well. It's just not turning into points and rebounds and assists and things like that yet.
Yeah, the big thing you said is there's a bench, but there's guys who are, I mean, not excited, but they understand the job of coming off the bench. Dusty Stromer, right? I mean, you talked about it kind of is a great fit. Like you don't have to score 20 tonight. But when the shot's open, you could like knock yourself out. And you're starting to see, like you said, those roles. Makai, I mean, we've asked him, he's flip flopped, like you said, so many times this season. Bench, he's dealt with a little bit of foul trouble as well this season. So, it has been a little all over the place from playing time perspective, but he has been a constant. He's even aggressive in St. Louis, not efficient, but he was aggressive. And so you're seeing those bench pieces. And that's, when we're talking Mountain West play, you're going to have to win games in different ways. So obviously there's a style, right? Bryce wants to play. This is high level basketball. You got to win games in multiple fashions, multiple different options, lineups. We saw him have to change things against Oklahoma State because of what Oklahoma State brought to the floor. They gave up a little bit of defense for some offense. They were around in that game against a Power 5 team. He had to make that move on the fly. There's going to be unique lineups that we're probably going to have to try and go with, and to have 8.5, 9 guys that you can really rely on. Yeah, it's interesting. And I think, we're seeing a culture, like you said, that guys are good with it and they want to win. You mentioned, I think Brian Moore Jr. is a perfect example, like mid-major player of the year, accolades, he had the ball a ton, plenty of Power 5 interest, I'm sure. Him being like, hey, I just want to win is I think a big statement. And I think some of that was built over the summer as well. I obviously a lot learned during St. Louis, but I think some of that stuff was built over the summer and has me really excited, I think, about the bench. And gosh, yeah, and Caleb Shaw, like you said, just fitting in there. It changes so many things, I feel like. So
Yeah,
we'll
and
see
I
how.
think,
Go
I
for it.
think you might talk about him, but I think F.A. Demerol being able to start, they tried to start him and it just wasn't working.
Yeah.
F.A., he's coming over to America. He's learning how to speak English, and he's figuring out American basketball, which is much more physical. It wasn't that he didn't want to be physical. It was just, I think it surprises a lot of people how physical college basketball is when you
And
go from high
packed
school to
in. Yep.
college or international to college and what the refs allow. I mean, against Big Ten teams and Big 12 teams, you saw how that was officiated. I thought it was fairly officiated against Iowa, but they let them kill each other. Like it
Yeah.
was like, hey, this is a Big Ten basketball game, boys. Suck it up, right?
Yep.
This is a Big 12 basketball game. So I think FA learning, one game it might be a little tighter, but if it's not, I need to go in there and bang and be physical and use all 7 foot. So the ability for him to be good enough to start and take minutes. Now you bring Breidenbach off the bench, which all that guy does is be in the right place at the right time and do the
Yep.
right thing every play, And he's
Yep.
very physical. He enjoys being physical, you can tell. So I think those two, Caleb and FA, being able to get put into the starting lineup, really freed up some other guys to be successful.
Yeah, it makes a lot more sense. And that is my third and final thing is the FA development. I mentioned even during I think his commitment, I did a video and I said I called this out of like we're going to see FA 1.0, 2.0, and maybe even an FA 3.0 just in one season. I think we could, based on the pedigree, some of the things we had heard. He had been on some kind of college basketball scouts sort of minds on, and the talent and the ceiling was through the roof. You watch the video and it was incredible, right? This guy's 7 foot. He's getting out. He's running in the break. He doesn't lay the ball up. I joked like he's not into layups. He's just not a big fan of them. He dunks the ball when he's around the basket. And I said, guys, like it's tough. I understand we're in this business kind of, I don't want to say transactional version of college basketball, but we are, right? He comes over, but yeah, you're right. He's 19. Like he's figuring this out. I don't even know if I don't think he took a visit. I'd imagine didn't come to Phoenix. So he gets to Phoenix
I don't think so, yeah.
After the U19s. And it's like, hey, this is a new place. And have enjoy yourself and play good basketball. And it's like, holy smokes, a lot to learn. But we're starting to see the signs. Oklahoma State obviously was like, whoa, and Bryce talked about it. The spacing, I think, helped him out to maybe bring out a little bit of that European style. They were playing more guards, and Oklahoma State played that way, and he looked super comfortable. He's shown plenty of flashes, I think, recently. And he's not a guy, if he's fighting and being physical, which was a problem early in the season, he's not one of those necessarily like detrimental big guys who needs the ball and is sitting in the paint in the way on drives. Like he's doing little things. I mean, I've seen him how many times over the last few games kind of box his big guy out. So Makai or Brian Moore gets to the lane without any problems. And I don't know. I'm looking at this version of FA who is, I think, 8-5 right now, 8 points, 5 rebounds. And I'm saying like that's feasible in the Mountain West. Like if he can do that, that is super helpful and very additional to, a good basketball team in the Mountain West. But what I'm saying is I feel like we're seeing FA 2.0. Like what is FA 3.0? And are we going to I think there's a version where he could be one of the better big guys in the Mountain West. Maybe not right away this Saturday, and there's going to be tougher matchups, but what if he turns into like a guy and really starts getting some confidence? And I mean, we've seen it. Caleb Shaw's shown some flashes at the end of last season. If you remember when he was making his run, just that momentum. And when you're playing well, there's nothing more powerful than that, especially in college basketball. You need to bottle that stuff up, right? And that's what makes teams so special. How about Walter Ellis, Noah Bauman in Vegas, a few years ago? Like if FA kind of finds something and it starts to click even more, what he's doing right now is helpful. So I want to be clear, and we've seen improvement. But I'm like, what happens if he gets even better? Like what? I don't know. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah. Brennan, I should know this. In NFL, they track sacks, but they also track hurries, right? Is there a way to track altered shots in
I don't
basketball?
think anybody does.
I don't think they do, right? But I would swear from the naked eye, he alters at least 3 shots, maybe 4 or 5 a game. In Wyoming, there would be guys that would turn the corner and they would get into paint, and you could see their brains go, oh, shoot, that guy's got a 7'7" wingspan. And they would pull up and they would adjust and they would alter because when he would jump out at them. So I think that on his defense, and he still makes mistakes. I mean, he's a freshman. He's still
fouls.
a freshman.
Yeah, he fouls. Yeah.
Yeah, he played a lot of minutes in international and all that stuff, but he's still a freshman. I think you're exactly right. I think we'll for sure see 3.0 this year. We might see 4.0 and 5.0 this year because he seems to be learning very fast. Now, if you're a Power 5 assistant coach, he stinks. You don't want him on your team. Don't even look at him. He's not going in the portal, blah, blah, right? Clip this out. But he's the type of guy that you could really build a team around moving forward, and he's learning very quickly. And I think he's going to cause a lot of problems later in the year in the Mountain West. And I mean, quite frankly, we're probably looking at hey, you got to win this tournament right now.
Yep.
You go on a run.
Definitely.
You beat a bunch of teams and go on a great run and get your net up high. Maybe there's an at-large bid out there for you. But he's a guy that's going to cause a lot of trouble in the Mountain West Conference tournament if he continues this progression. And I don't see any reason he wouldn't because he's getting played up. That's part of the problem with freshmen is most coaches like Bryce, they don't enjoy playing freshmen because they make mistakes. and they pull him. So a freshman will get 4 minutes a game. It's hard to improve when you get 4 minutes a game, you know? So they're like, well, we'll improve you when you practice. He's getting 20 minutes a game.
Yep.
So they're going to improve at practice and he's going to improve in the games.
Yeah, what he's bringing right now is really impressive, especially considering I feel like how it started. It wasn't good. And
Mm-mm.
it says a lot about him. Like Bryce didn't, he didn't mince words. Like these weren't my words, but he was almost, I think, said indirectly, like he's soft. I pretty much just said it. I know he spoke with you, speaks with you guys after the games, and he's really hard on him. And look what we got, Oklahoma State. I think, another thing I think that's really cool too of him, like he did the media after Oklahoma State, after a great game. We talked about, that's really, I feel like awesome and says a lot about him. One, to be coachable this quickly, coming to a new place, and then to go, I feel like, and do media after a great game and feel comfortable to speak in a language obviously he's learning. I think that's really cool and says a lot about the character. And then I think you see the basketball talent. And again, you just watch those videos of some of the stuff he was doing overseas and you're like, whoa, what happens if he can start doing some dribble handoffs at the top of the key and he can hit guys on back door, like some of that stuff we've seen from Wilhelm, maybe,
Yeah.
what happens if he can start flashing some of that, or, he gets out in transition and just runs straight to the rim and they could start finding him there. Like there's things I think he could start to add in. I think you're right, though. Not training wheels, right? But he is still a freshman. He's made mistakes. We were talking a lot with him. There was a lot of, after a pick and roll, right? Him and the defender, the teammate come together and they're kind of pointing, right? And they're saying, and there was a lot of kind of miscommunication, which was normal, I feel like. And I feel like some of those have cleared up a little bit. He's getting a little bit better. The fouls are still there a little bit, but you watch him and you see the progress he's made and you think, man, like Mountain West play. I know there's some good bigs, but oh my gosh, man, we look at FA, like could GCU potentially, could we be talking at, mid-February saying GCU might have one of the best, maybe two bigs in the Mountain West? Like, I don't know. And that might be on the table if he can start to do some of those things as a freshman. So I don't know, really impressed by him. I don't know if you have any other thoughts on FA.
Yeah, I think it would be on the bigs. I've mentioned I would like Caleb Smith to start, contributing in the stats column. He's a great kid. He played well in the Big West, so I know it's there. I think he's still trying to figure out where he's at. Hey, when you bring me in, what do I need to focus on? What do I need to do? That type of thing. I think he'll get there. Dennis Evans is a bit of an X factor. I don't think he's the guy you can run an offense through or you can play 10 minutes, 12 minutes a game necessarily. But you talk about altered shots.
Yeah,
When that
he's
dude's
a
in the
curveball.
middle defensively, guys are like,
Yeah.
I want no part of this dude. He's very good defensively. He's very good with his feet. And so if Dennis could get to the point where they trust him enough to put him in games in certain situations to
Yep.
play 7-8 minutes a game, he could be huge too. And then you got a stable of big men from FA to Wilhelm to Dennis to Caleb. Those are all 6'10" guys and bigger.
And Nana, who kind of is a tweener, but might be the best rebounder of them all and a complete dog. And you kind of see the roles start to play out there. I 100% agree. Yeah, the Caleb Smith thing, I talked with Mark Rogers. I interviewed him over the summer. And he talked about, one thing with him is in high school, his body was totally different. He was a lot shorter and he hadn't hit his growth spurt and he was a little bit bigger. And so he says it's not like playing catch up, but he's had to learn so much on the fly over the last 5 years of him playing basketball. And he hasn't really necessarily like been set. And yeah, I think there's been some iffy shot selection, but man, he's big. Like he's a legit like 6'10" and he's strong. And if he can say, hey, I can contribute this 8 minutes a game, that definitely changes a lot of things. We've seen some flashes from him. Wilhelm, the other guy we've seen, the passing, the big to big passing's been really exceptional. And yeah, those bigs are really fascinating. That's almost maybe the bigger conversation with FA is like that, the big guy stable in the room. Like if they can really start to piece together and kind of play those roles, it could be a really interesting conversation, defensively and then offensively, if some of them can start interchanging and doing some different things. But yeah, that was our all positive kind of part of the show. I think, a lot to be optimistic about. It's going to be a grind. though. I mean, it is going to be a grind. It starts Saturday, a really good Colorado State team, and then it's like, oh yeah, have a good time, Colorado State. Oh, you're on the road to Boise, by the way. A team that is now inside the bubble. So it's going to be a really tough road. I'm curious, any early Colorado State thoughts? I don't know if you've done any look ahead. They're dealing with some injuries. Kind of waiting to see what that looks like. I know they play Tuesday, so we'll get some answers. Sounds like Jorgensen sounded really bad. So, we hoping for good news there just in general for him, but lots of shooting, and Alif Rokmanesh just kind of rolled over this group and seems like the culture's kind of playing. Any thoughts as we kind of look ahead to Saturday?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing them on Tuesday. I know they're ticked after just a beatdown at the hands
Brutal.
of Utah State. So I know they're good. Hopefully they take it out on their opponent on Tuesday and and don't
Yeah.
save it till the new year. But yeah, I think this is what we talked about earlier. There are no breaks in the Mountain West Conference because you jump right into conference play and you go Colorado State, Boise State, San Jose State, New Mexico in the pit with maybe one of the best coaches in the conference or in the country.
Yeah, they've been impressive.
Right? Then you got Utah State. You get them at home, and you get San Diego State. I mean, it's just a gauntlet for those first.
Yep.
I think didn't KenPom have us like a 2-6 or 2-7?
Yeah,
like
and that
starting off
stretch,
the Mountain West
tough
Conference
stretch.
or something like that. That is a very difficult stretch, but it's the same for everybody. I mean, Colorado State had to go on the road and play in the Spectrum their first
Yep.
conference game. Good luck with that, So, but I think what it tells you is that any of these teams can beat any of these teams on any given day. And there's going to be a couple of teams that get on a roll. There's going to be a couple of teams you expected to be great. They're going to go, oh, wow, they underachieved. But there's going to be a couple of teams that are going to go, wow, they just peeled off 7 in a row. How'd they do that?
Yep. Yeah, it's happened
And
every year.
Hopefully the Lopes are one of them. Hopefully they start a stretch here and everybody goes, how'd they end that stretch at 6-2 instead of 2-6?
Yeah, and you can look back, right? The last 2 years of the Mountain West Conference tournament alone. 2 years ago, you have New Mexico with Jalen House, obviously close with Javon Blackshear, kind of part of that group. They make a crazy run. They win the Mountain West Conference tournament, play themselves into the NCAA tournament. And then we've got last year's team, Colorado State, where I wrote my mailbag. That's one of the best 12-game stretches in mid-major basketball history. If you call Mountain West a mid-major, they win all those Mountain West games in a row. They win the Mountain West Conference. They beat Memphis, and outside of that Derek Queen, I don't know if you stayed for that at all. That shot, they were playing in the second weekend, and they were, I think there were some metrics that said over a month they were literally the third best team in all of college basketball. And so you're right. And I talked about this earlier, just being able to bottle it up in this team, you got to just take these things as they go. Injuries, obviously we knock on wood. We know that's a part of, life and conference play, the travel. It's tough and it's brutal out there. So we've got a really, really good stretch ahead. Potter, can you just tell us really quick as we kind of finish up here, how can we listen to you? I know you guys are fantastic to listen to. Obviously, the post games are mandatory. The pre games, great. But tell us where we can listen to you and everything you do for the Lopes.
Yeah, Paul Core and I are back at it again. We're streaming 100%, so you can download the Lopes Nation app. We stream right from there, and then you can catch us on the Varsity app, or you can just go to gculopes.com on the schedule page and hit listen right there. We come on a half an hour prior to the game. We always have Paul has an interview with a player. I have an interview with Coach Drew. And on the post game, we always have Coach Drew. If we win, we have a player on as well.
Yeah.
And so those are always more fun when we have two on. But yeah, so Paul and I have been at it for quite a while. And now that we're streaming, we were able to expand that pregame to 30 minutes and kind of we have all the time in the world to do the post game. So I would say just download the Lopes Nation app and it'll pop up and boom, you can do that. And then, of course, you can listen to Jim Howell for all the women's basketball. That's a new thing this year. We're streaming all of the women's games home and away for the season.
And I think we can right there as well. We're not necessarily breaking news, but road win today for the Lady Lopes in San Jose just happened a few hours ago. I know it's been a grind for them this season. They're figuring things out, but they go on the road and get a big win. So, hopefully they can, like we were talking about, bottle up some of that and make a run in the Mountain West Conference. We know on the women's side, the Mountain West, it's usually pretty open for who wants to go take it, if you want to go take it. So, we'll see what Coach Gainey can do moving forward. But Potter, thank you as always. We'll see you Saturday. Really looking forward to it. If you're a Lopes fan, guys, come on. This is Obviously non-conference is great, but get your butt to GCU Arena on Saturday. I know the students might not be back in full force quite yet just due to some scheduling with the semester, but this is what we live for, guys. So make sure you get there Saturday. And, if you're not there, make sure you tune in to the to Potter postgame with Paul Coral. It's really good. So we appreciate you hopping on the podcast, all the work you do for the Lopes. Thank you so much for hopping on.
Yeah, thanks you so much, Brennan. Appreciate all the coverage that you do and seeing you out at all the games. And have a happy New Year, man. And we'll bring in the new year with the big one over the Rams, hopefully.
That'll be great. Awesome. Okay, we'll see you there. Thanks, Potter.